who are you, where are you from, and what do you do?
So my name is Declan Leung. I am from Macrofelt, just up in mid-Ulster there. So it's about 35 odd miles from Belfast is probably the best way to describe it. Whenever I'm away on holidays, I like to wind people up and just say Macrofelt to them though. And it really does confuse people because they don't actually get where it is in any shape or form. What do? I like to keep myself quite busy in terms of work and external sort of hobbies, activities and things like that as well. So my main job, what I do sort of the 9 to 5 is I work for Athletics NI as a club and coach development officer. And then I also own a couple of businesses myself. One of those being an online events management company. I'm also a sports massage therapist, and then I also do coaching, run coaching as well. So quite a lot of different things going on to keep myself busy. What generally seems to happen with myself is I come up with an idea of what I'm going to do or how I'm going to do it, spend a lot of time building it up, getting in the process and procedures right for it, getting it sort of streamlined, freeing up time, and then as soon as I get freed up that time, I realize I don't actually like having free time, so I end up going and starting something else, hence why I end up taking on more businesses, more jobs and more work. So yeah, quite a lot of different things going, a lot of time management needed just to make sure everything falls into place quite a lot of the time too.
So how did you get into your job with Athletics NI? So where did that develop from?
So that developed, I've been in Athletics NI about coming up to 4 months now. And I had seen the role advertised a couple of times, and whenever it was advertised, it was asking for a certain set of criteria. And I looked at it and I thought, I'm filling probably about 95% of that criteria, but there was a couple of things that I just wasn't hitting, and those were sort of very much the athletics-based things because I come from a running background, run coach background. So I sort of held off in applying for it. Whenever I seen it advertised again during the summer, I was working in the civil service and had decided I just didn't want to work anymore. So I thought, there's nothing ventured, nothing gained. I'll put an application through with the 95% of the requirements that are required, but keeping it very open in terms of that I'm willing and able to put myself through those qualifications that are required. They're the coaching assistant and athletics coach. So I've already sat, the coaching assistant at that and working towards athletics coach hopefully next year too. So I seen the skills and requirements that were required for the job, and I realized that I could tick the box for most of those, that a lot of it was problem solving, logistical, and pulling programs together, and just sort of making things happen from pulling lots of different things together and just getting it out there. So I'm quite a sort of person that can just get things done or make things happen whenever I put my mind to it. So, and I think that's what the club and coach development role really is, that there's a lot of times that you're pulling things together and pulling people together and just making things happen. So
on to the next question. Describe yourself in 3 words.
So I suppose the first word is actually 2 words. It's hard working. Okay. I can sort of, I'll put that into the 1 word. It's hard working, just to sort of save the other words. Stubborn is probably a good word that I would use to describe myself. I think most people would describe me as that there as well. And adventurous. So that would sort of very much sum up me, at my personality. I'm a very hard-working individual. The stubbornness comes into sort of all facets of my life, work and personal as well. Whenever I do set a goal or set myself a challenge, I'm very stubborn in getting that done and seeing it through. And adventurous, I'm pretty much up for anything, up for any challenge, willing to try nearly everything, and put myself out there for most challenges too.
What does a typical day look like for you? So from when you wake up to when you hit the hay, go to sleep?
Well, busy. is a typical day for me. Sort of the Monday to Friday would be a typical day for me, and you usually getting up around, the alarm starts going off at about 6:30. I'm a multi-alarm person. That sort of takes me a couple of times to get up. I'm not a morning person at all, but you know, I'm learning to become one. So usually up and out of the bed and out the door by 7 o'clock if I'm working in the office down here in Belfast. So it takes about an hour to an hour and a half travelling wise to get down here. Usually get down here for 8, half 8, and then get started into my working day. Logging on, checking emails, responding to everything that needs required, and then starting to work on the different projects, programs and courses that I have on the go at the moment. I work between sort of the different departments. I think I can call them departments, can't think of a better word there with that there. But it's you know, working with both the foundations and fundamentals and working with coach education as well. So there's a lot of different things that I'm sort of juggling even in that side of work as well. Whenever I get finished up from that, then I'm heading back up the road, usually heading straight to the sports massage studio, which is in Castle Dawson. I try to get there about an hour or two before I actually have to work. Stick on the running gear, go out for a run. So that's generally whenever I get the time to get my own training done, is in that sort of hour period there. Then I spend about 4 hours working sports massage, get home in the evenings, usually around 9:30, 10 o'clock. Then it's open up the laptop, more work in the other businesses, responding to emails, designing things, creating more programs, answering questions on the coaching that I've done as well. Doing that while eating my dinner, and then usually in bed for about 11. And that's a typical day. So it is. If I'm working from home, there's slight variations to that there in terms of, you know, I've got an hour extra in the morning to actually eat breakfast and things. So yeah, quite busy, but there's a lot of time management involved with that there. That my diary, my own personal diary, set out. I learned this here whenever I first went self-employed in half-hour blocks, and every half-hour block has something built into it. So it means that if I'm working, you know, a certain period of time, that's when I'm working. But it also allows me not to get carried away with things. So if I set aside, say, an hour to work on a project that I'm going to be doing, and it ends up going over that hour, I stop on the hour and move on to the next thing. And it might maybe take half an hour, and that's grand, then move on to the next thing. So that means I'm only ever behind that one thing that day. Rather than running behind the whole day, that you're always on target with it. So there's a lot of time management involved, but it allows me just to do the things that I need to do. When it comes to the weekend, things are a little bit different because there's obviously not the 9 to 5, or most of the times not. Sometimes I'm out doing different courses and programs. But yeah, I've usually got a bit more time, but usually do spend that doing research on the other businesses, what I'm going to do, as well as other coaching, and then some nice long runs where I can go out for 2, 3, 4, 5 hours.
5 hours, that's a bit.
5 hours is not the typical run for me. It depends on what I'm training for or how I'm training. If I'm pushing for a time, I'll never really train any more than 2.5 hours. You know, I think that's it. But whenever I'm just having fun with my running and going out and doing a sort of ultras and things like that, there, I could go out for a run and, you know, be away for 5 or 6 hours, sometimes 7 or 8 hours. Nothing more enjoyable than just heading up a mountain with a backpack and getting lost somewhere and then trying to find your way back home again.
What has been your favourite failure, and how has that led to later success?
So I'm going to use an example here of probably one of, it was actually my second ultra. The second ultra that I've ever done was a 24-hour run. It was the 24-hour run at Victoria Park. At the time it was Energia. And I had done a few marathons up to this point, and I thought I was in good shape for it. But I didn't train specific for the event itself, and I think that was the big failure with regards to that there, where there's a huge difference between just rocking up and doing a marathon with sort of happy and half fit, and trying to run for 24 hours and reach a target of 100 miles. The biggest failure with that there was not running enough nighttime runs, not running enough short loops. I think a lot of the training I had done was sort of taking myself out for those mountain runs and things like that there. Whenever it was a short loop, you were coming across your aid station every mile. And whenever you sort of get quite tired, the desire to sit down became a lot more and you did end up sitting down, you know, because I didn't really have a plan. So you were sort of sitting down every mile, and all of a sudden time was getting away. It was getting harder to get up and harder to get up, and then I realised I couldn't see at night in the dark because it wasn't. So these are things I hadn't really trained for or practiced. So at the end of that there, I felt like it was a failure because I only did 82 miles at it, whereas I had set out a goal of doing 100 miles, and I'd raised a bit of money for charity as well. So it sort of felt like I was letting people down, you know, in terms of I said I was going to do something. So it made me realise then going forward that I had to start training for the specificity of the event that I was doing, and future events. Then I would make sure I would look at, you know, what's the terrain going to be like, where's the conditions going to be, is it going to be overnight, is it going to be out and backs, is it going to be, you know, small loops, and that's what I trained for those. So I used that then going into the next year, which was my next attempt at the 100 miles, which was the Dublin to Belfast run. And there was a lot of sort of runs. It was point-to-point runs, carrying your pack with you, looking at the types of roads that you'd be running on, trying to replicate that as much as possible as well. But then the biggest hurdle to that event that I found would have been coming along the A1, the road from, I think it's Banbridge into Lisburn. I would have been coming onto it about sort of 5-6 o'clock in the morning if everything was going to plan, and it's a really busy dual carriageway. Training nighttime runs, there was a point where I had worked a Saturday, then went into another job, worked Saturday, didn't get finished work till about 2 o'clock in the morning, jumped in the car, drove to Armagh, and ran the Armagh Marathon was on that next day, but I started running already, so I was doing the 10k loop, so I had ran it I think 3 times, then the marathon started, then I jumped into the marathon too. So that was all about how am I going to deal with fatigue and tiredness and running on pure empty, you know, and how that's going to feel. And it made me realise that, you know, I was taking caffeine on too early, I wasn't eating enough, you know, I wasn't wearing my glasses again. So all those things started to filter in. So whenever it came to the actual event itself, I was able to put all those together. And it worked out really well. And I knew what it was going to feel like running on a busy road. I knew how I was going to feel tired-wise at sort of 7 or 8 in the morning, having been on my feet for that length of time, and still have a marathon to run. And that all sort of fell into place. So I ended up doing that, and I think done pretty well. You know, I was really happy with that event.
Very good. So did you find them quite tough mentally, or? Do
you know, more the person. So whenever I was going down, the soul, I do a lot of my running myself. I do nearly probably 95% of my running by myself, and the whole point, what I had planned to do on this event was run it by myself, because that's what I had trained for. I didn't want to get caught up into somebody else's race, or I didn't want somebody else to be running with me and me sort of messing up their race. But on the bus from Belfast to Dublin, I got chatting to a guy called Kyle Johnson from Antrim area, and he and I ended up just sort of comparing notes, and we were actually aiming for very similar goals. We had a very similar plan in place in terms of where we were going to stop, what we were going to take on, how we were going to fuel ourselves. So we ended up running it together. It was quite good. There was a few points in that event where I went into quite a dark place, but he pulled me out of it, and then vice versa, the other way around. Whenever he was feeling it, I was able to pull him back out of it. So we ended up running every step of it together. So yeah, it was really good.
So what advice would you give your younger self?
So the advice I'd give my younger self is get involved in sport earlier. So I was quite an active child, but didn't have any real purpose in my activeness. I didn't really have any goal, ambition. I just had a lot of energy, you know. Played a lot of soccer, football, you know, running around fields and things like that there. But but I actually wasn't any good at it. I had no skill at it at all, really. Moved into Gaelic at one point because that's what most people were doing, and again could run quite a lot, but never actually had any skill with the ball. So never got any game time, never really played. Walked away from that sport at 15, went back to soccer, joined a different club, but again, this sort of youth setup wasn't as good as what they are now, and you were playing with guys that were bigger and stronger and didn't like the fact that you're actually quicker than them, even though you didn't have the ball, so you get lumps kicked out of you. So at sort of about 16, I sort of walked away from sport in general at that point, and that was it. Didn't really do any activity at all. Went to university, went to Belfast, started working, sort of dabbled in running at a point, you know, once when I was, I think, 20, but, you know, it sucked and I just stopped after about 5 minutes, and that was it. So I didn't actually start into athletics, into running again until I was 32, and it was just, woke up one day and said I'm going to go for a run. So I went out for a run and ended up running 5k. Next day went out for another run, ran 10k. Within 2 weeks, I was up at 13 miles. So I had a natural sort of stubbornness engine in me. You know, I don't know well if you want to say a sort of engine, but I don't recommend that because I ended up spending about 3 months in the physio table after that there, with him laughing at me at sort of the progression that I'd made and realising that this is not the way to do it. So then we scaled it right back and working with the physio, and we built a more robust plan of running from there. But it made me realise in that point in time that I sort of really enjoyed the longer stuff, and I ended up sort of doing a half marathon then that year, and then a marathon the next year, and then it sort of escalated from there. So the advice I would give to my younger self is, you know, sort of seek out other sports, you know, and that's one of the things I hope that I can do in my role within Athletics NI, is open up the sport to more people who maybe don't see it as a thing that they can do, a sport that they can do. I want to sort of try and remove as many barriers to that as I can, removing the sort of accessibility to it. So I think what happens with athletics at the moment is kids get involved with it because their parents are involved in it, because most kids tend to go towards the team sports, the ones that their peers are doing, the more popular, sexy sports, you know. Whereas athletics, the sort of perception of it is, you know, cold nights at the track, running laps in the dark by yourself, you know, absolutely blown out of your arse at times, you know. That's the perception, and I want to try and break that perception down an awful lot. So the advice that I'm giving to my younger self is the advice I'm hopefully going to give to a lot of younger people now.
Very good. So why do you think there's such a high drop-off rate at that, like 15, 16, 17 age?
Because I think at that stage in life there's so much else going on, you know. Girls in particular, you know, their body shape changes an awful lot compared to us fellas, so that's huge to deal with. But in fellas as well, and boys, there's just so many other distractions in life. You know, we've just went through puberty, we've grown, we've got bigger, we've got stronger. There's other sports vying for our attention. There's computer games. There's the laziness. There's also then you've got school, the pressure of that there, and your teachers pushing you different directions. You know, you could be very, very gifted from a athletic point of view, but you know, the schools want to push you down the academic route because, you know, it's important for your future as well, but we sort of need to get that balance right, because, you know, physical activity and mental well-being go so much hand in hand, and a lot of young athletes sort of take a step back from their sport to concentrate on their academics, whereas if they just kept their sport up once or twice a week for half an hour to an hour, it's actually going to help their mental well-being too.
Back to earlier, you said about when you're in your 30s, you started going out for runs, so you did 5k and then 10k and then you went up to 13 miles.
Mm-hmm.
So do you feel it kind of becomes like a habit, and you kind of get don't know how to describe it, like sucked into
I think
particularly?
running is very addictive.
Yeah.
It's one of the sports that it's cheap to get into at the start. You know, it depends on your shoe obsession, you know, like me. But at the beginning, it's quite accessible. You can just open the door with a pair of trainers and some comfortable clothes on and go out at it, and you can progress at it very quickly as well. One of the things that helps retain people with any sport is seeing quick progression. You know, if you took up a real technical sport like, I don't know, pole vaulting, for example, you know, you're not going to get good at that within 2 to 3 weeks. Whereas running, you start a Couch to 5K program, you have people who can barely run for 30 seconds. By the end of the 3rd week, they're running for 10, 15 minutes. You can see a very, very quick progression on that there. And one of the things that helps retain people's interest in it is that type of progression. So running is very addictive in terms of that there, because you just want to keep getting better and better and go further or get faster and enjoy it. It releases a lot of feel-good hormones. You know, your endorphins come into there, and that's a natural thing that happens as well. I think anybody who sort of starts running out of nowhere, you know, the first 15-20 minutes of any run, it hurts, it sucks, it's horrible, you know, and I think that's sort of a natural defense mechanism for the body, because if we go back to whenever we were sort of didn't have as much food as accessible to ourselves, our natural state was rest and digest. We just wanted to sort of sit about and preserve ourselves. So whenever we got up and tried to run, the body would sort of fight against it and say, no, we don't want to do this, just sit back down, rest, save your energy, you don't know when you're going to eat again or whatever it is. But if you're continuously running sort of 15-20 minutes, there's a wee switch happens, and the sort of like, okay, we're in danger or we're chasing food, we better make this easy for you. So that's when it releases all the endorphins. So it slows the heart rate down, controls the breathing, makes the muscles hurt a wee bit less, and you actually start to enjoy it. You know, so this is what they call the infamous runner's high. You don't really hear about the cyclist's high or the weightlifter's high or anything like that there, you know, so it's a natural phenomenon there as well, that it becomes addictive, and you start, I suppose, anything that feels good, tastes good, and human nature is we want more of it, you know, so.
And you took that to the extreme for your ultras?
I took it to the extreme for the ultras, and I think that just comes down to pushing myself and also realising where my own capabilities lie. You know, I'm now 40 years of age. I'm not going to be able to, you know, run a sub 15-minute 5K. You know, I'm not going to be able to compete at that type of level. But whenever it comes to ultras, there's a more level playing field that you can push on. The first podium place I got was an ultra, you know, and I've pushed on from then, and I've won another one. I did win a 5K, but it was only because nobody else turned up at it, you know. But yeah, ultras, it really is more of a mental game than a physical game. It's about how much pain you're willing to endure to get to the finish line.
What motivates you, like, when you're running? So what, like, motivates you to keep on going and keep running, like, day after day, and put in all the effort and training?
Yeah, a lot of the times I prefer the process than the results. I really enjoy following a training plan. I think that comes down to the same sort of process what I put into my work ethic. Everything's organised and follows a time and things like that. So if I have a plan written down, it's almost always going to get followed to the letter. I recently completed a training block for Dublin Marathon over 16 weeks. I only missed 2 sessions in the whole 16 weeks, and both of those were easy runs. So all the main sessions were hit, everything was done. So the process and seeing the improvements, whether that's an improvement in terms of the time that the times that I run, the paces that I'm running, or the effort levels as well. I'm a big fan of the data, that comes with things. So you're constantly monitoring the heart rate, your RPE as well, and keeping an eye on that there. So in that training block, I was able to see each month, not only was my pace is getting quicker, but also the heart rate was dropping. So I was running faster with more efficiency too. And that was all down to following the robust training plan there. So those are the types of things that I enjoy, seeing that there and seeing that come to fruition. But then I was also seeing things that other people are sometimes watching you don't realize that are watching you. You know, I'm inspired by many runners out there, but I also know from people messaging me that I have inspired them or got them out the door too, to complete something, because I am just a 40-year-old man who didn't really do any athletics, but is out there, you know, 5-6 days a week training as hard as I can.
What does success look like for you in the future?
That is a tough question. So it's going to be I'm going to answer this one here. I think just to be healthy and happy. Okay, that's success to me. You know, contentment in life for me. I'm actually quite easily pleased with regards to things. I used to work quite a high pressurized job, and I sort of walked away from it because I wasn't motivated by the money or this, you know, the sort of accolades that came with it as well. And in fact, I'm more content in life actually earning less and having a bit less pressure. It allows me to do things that are a bit more fun. It allows me to have those adventures that I can do, that I can go out and explore things and do things, meet new people, you know, talk to new people, find out new things, and also then continuously learn and do things. You know, over the last 3-4 months, I've completed numerous modules that I just happen to find interesting. Some of them are not even work related in any shape or form. Some of them aren't sport related. If I find a topic that interests me, I'll go in and find out all about it, you know, and just sit and do that there. And just the ability to do that, the time to do that there as well, that's success to me.
The final question is, what would you change within the sport to improve it in the future? Okay, so I'm working on a program at the moment with regards to that there, and one of the things, like I said it earlier there, is trying to remove the barriers for children. I think children deserve the chance to participate in sport, and sometimes there's a lot of barriers in place for people, whether that's access to facilities, location, finance, you know, social background. There's lots and lots of different barriers in place for young people who deserve the chance to sort of play games, learn to move, and have a future in sport, no matter what sport that is. So my program hopefully will address a few of those issues. I can't imagine I'm going to knock down every barrier, but I want to try and remove as many of them as I can. So looking for that program, or what that program is going to look like. It's just going to try and keep things very fun and games based, that'll create an emotional attachment for children to the sport without them actually realizing that it's the sport that they're getting attached to, by introducing sort of the skills based games quite early to them, you know, sort of P5, 6 and 7, whenever they're at the age that they should be, you know, getting introduced to sport. And then by the time they hit sort of 11, 12 and they're starting to mature and grow, they can continue working on their skills. And if they decide to go into athletics, fantastic. But if they decide that they want to become a hockey player or a rugby player, you know, I've given them through the program the fundamental movement skills to allow them to be better athletes in that sport. And, you know, maybe at 15, 16 years of age, they may come back, you know, into athletics at that point in time. There's a lot of real good, strong, fast, explosive children out there that just have never been given a chance to actually partake in our sport. We've had instances, for example, here with Athletics and they do likes of Panthers and Star Trek, and these kids are coming along who maybe play soccer or Gaelic, and all of a sudden they're throwing the javelin further than anyone else because they've got great skills on it, but they've never given a chance to this. So then we've got a sort of talent sort of spotting things like that. We're going to invite them along to a Rising Stars squad, and all of a sudden we're starting to get a progression within that there, and they're seeing a pathway into the sport there too. So
there are a lot of children out there that just are talented, but just have never had a chance to see our sport. And that's what hopefully my programme, which will try to make it accessible to all, will break down that type of barrier.
Alright, I want you to do something for me.
Right?
You're gonna write down a question for the next guest. I'm definitely not stealing this from another podcast.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Right. Write a question down for the next.
I also don't know who the next guest is. So,
That
depending on where this goes and when it goes, I would love some suggestions. That's a good one.
It's not a good one.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
15 minutes. Looks like a little bit of podcast.
Yeah.
Activity?
Activity, yeah. I didn't have any real.
What is it called? That's a wrap.
Brilliant.